So, this is me. I'm a freelance project manager, currently working on 2 different projects. But the most important thing is I'm a WEBCON lover. So I really like the product. You will probably see it from the presentation. Okay. So the title was the implementation of WEBCON BPS in Diners Club Italy. But before we jump to the practical cases of implementation, I'd like to outline a bit how the process went before we choose WEBCON BPS. So our core system was very rigid. It still is. The development is expensive. It takes months to implement anything. Then the work in our call center is, it was based on SharePoint list, Excel files, and all other business processes were mainly done by email. I call this chaos because it's very difficult to manage processes in this kind of scenario. So we went on comparing different solutions that market offered. We had in mind more or less what we want to achieve, what we need. So we were looking for ease of use. We didn't want to spend too much time on building processes. Then one key point was for non-programmers. I'm not a programmer, my colleagues were not programmers, and so we thought drag and drop, something like that, should do for us. Then we didn't have any budget at the beginning. It was the time of the crisis. So we started looking to open source alternatives, but soon realized they were not really suited for our needs. Then we didn't want something that we would need external support, obviously because of the budget. And another key point was the integration with other systems. Our customer base is quite big. We have about 500,000 persons and about 300,000 companies in our database. And we knew it would be easier for everyone to see some data from the core system in the WEBCON or SharePoint environment. So at least this kind of integration was what we were looking for. Not to have to switch every time to different systems. And then we wanted it to be extendable. It was more a dream, something we wanted to have. We didn't exactly know how. But we also knew that no system will address all our needs out of the box. That's why we were looking for something extendable. So we spent quite some time exploring the market. There were different options. First, it was activity, but it was for programmers, so off you go from the list. Next, it was K2. The first demo presentation was really impressive, but then we heard the price and I just went, what are you, nuts? We don't have any money, so forget about it. Then it was Bonitasoft, another open source solution, but we tried hard to understand it, how it works. We didn't manage to. And finally, there was Nintex. It looked nice. It was an alternative. but, oops, sorry. So it was an alternative but, and that there's a story behind that but. So to explain it, I will tell my story. So it was like the colors on the screen. It was a nice sunny autumn afternoon. And I stumbled upon WEBCON. And I said to myself, this one looks cool. So if half of what they are promising is true, it might really be a good candidate for our needs. So I decided to contact them, ask for a demo environment if possible, because I'm the kind of guy that needs to feel things, touch things. Probably it's difficult to imagine me touching Designer Studio, but I needed it. So it was maybe a day or two. Someone from WEBCON got back to me with all the accesses and everything. And in the evening, I started playing with it. I put the kids to bed, opened my PC, connected to the server, and fired up Designer Studio. And so the first impression was, okay, I have 3 tutorials here. They were PDF or video, I don't remember now. And I tried. I just tried based on the tutorials to build something, and everything worked. So I said to myself, okay, let's try to address a different process, one that was keeping us busy and making us nervous about at that time. So I started building it. It was quite a complex process. I will talk about it more in detail later. But I managed to do something. It had many steps, many logics, many actions implemented, and the first version was quite good. Without any knowledge, previous knowledge about WEBCON, I managed to build this process, this workflow that worked. So I was really impressed. On one hand, about me, on the other about what WEBCON was able to give me. So that was the point in time I said to myself, okay, we need this product in our company, because if I was able to do something like this in few days without knowledge, we can do much more with just a bit of knowledge. Right. The main benefits we saw in WEBCON, and why we also chose it at the end, it was integration with SharePoint. So it was a big plus because we were using SharePoint already. The users were used to the interface, so we knew it would be much easier to teach them how to use another solution that depends on SharePoint. Okay, then it was easy to learn. As I said previously, I learned it in a few days, maybe hours even. So this was the second point. Next, the third one, instant change. I didn't have that name at that time, but everything I did, it was present on the screen immediately. So I just saved, refreshed the web page, and I could see the changes live. So I was quite impressed about it as well. I lost the mouse here.
It's on the second screen now.
Okay.
Right behind you.
Sorry. Okay, then the Microsoft Office add-ins. I saw so many possible scenarios of implementation with those, especially to see the tasks in Outlook, because at that time we used the SharePoint list. It was a nightmare to search through that list. It had so many tasks on it, and having them available in Outlook, it would make everything so much easier. Then the flexibility, that's always something good, right? What I mean with it is the fact that we didn't have to implement the work from start to end in one shot. So we could go something called agile, and just deliver in steps, and everything that was working before worked also in the second and the third iteration. So this was the fifth point. And finally, the mobile app. I thought it was very, very nice to have it, especially for our managers to approve costs from the meetings, from the airports, from anywhere, because our system is very closed. We are a financial institution, so we cannot allow external connections, and with WEBCON it would be possible to have that on a mobile app. Okay, just some boring statistics. I don't like them, but they say it's nice to put them on, so I just did. So as you can see, we started working in December 2014, and we delivered a total of 89 processes till today. With processes, I mean workflows, because we have the one-on-one, each process has its own workflow. That's the scenario we are dealing with. Okay, and next I'll present 3 cases of implementation. So the first one is acquiring contracts tracking. This was our first workflow we implemented, and this is the one I was talking earlier that I started to implement in WEBCON's demo environment. It all started with a huge Access file. It was saved on a shared drive and accessed by a whole department, and it was really a mess. Then after that, we went to SharePoint services, put the list on, then updated SharePoint to 2010, then 2013, and so on. And this list was only growing. There was some process behind, but the list itself, it didn't allow it. The people could choose the status of each item, but sometimes they chose it right, sometimes they chose it wrong. So this was our main problem, and then we got WEBCON, and everything changed completely, because when we implemented this workflow, we had a clear picture of every item. Each item had its status assigned by the process, so it wasn't chosen accidentally from the list of statuses. And we also had the ability to search much better than in SharePoint was. The history log was also useful for us. And it really saved our lives in this case WEBCON, because otherwise I don't know how we implement something like that with what we had at our disposal. Then the most important or maybe helpful functionalities I found when implementing this process was the mail merge, because previously we have to merge letters with Excel files and Word files, and now the system took care of everything. Then starts sub-workflow. There were many different departments involved in this process. So there were smaller tasks that needed to be done by other departments. So we just started sub-workflows. And task notifications. It was useful for when the task was not assigned to a group of people, but to a named person. And so he didn't have to go every time on SharePoint, WEBCON, check if there are tasks. He got an email and did what he needed to do. And then, of course, we had big plans for the future with the workflow. We wanted to integrate it with our core system. We still didn't, but we plan to. Because right now we do double data entry. First, it's in WEBCON, and second is in our core system. Hopefully, in a few months, we can build those web services and just send the data in. What we learned from building this process, personally, I think there are no limits to what you can do with WEBCON. You just need to have good imagination. Okay, the next one was complaints workflow, something our legal department requested. So at the beginning, again, there was one Excel file, shared drive, accessed by many people, and it's easy to mess something with those files in this way. At the end, there was also a regulation from Bank of Italy. They requested us to have a system in which we would store all the complaints and have the history log and everything. It was really detailed what they expected us to do. So the legal department started looking for a solution. They found something. It was a dedicated software for these specific cases. And it was, I don't remember exactly, but it was 5 or maybe 10,000 euros for the licenses. And then fortunately, I heard about those discussions. I asked the legal department if we can have a quick meeting just to give me what they need. We did it, and in a few days, I prepared the first version, which satisfied all their needs. And compared to 5 or 10,000 euros, it was a few days of my work. I think it was quite saving for the company. So what we learned from it, I think that whatever your business problem is, try to solve it with WEBCON first. And of course, it's not suitable for every single case you have in company, but at least think about it. Can we do it with WEBCON? I was always having this kind of attitude, and it worked. Okay, again, the most useful features in this workflow for me was the send HTML email to customers directly. In past happened that the people who was working the case sent the wrong template. And being a complaint, the customer got a wrong answer, so it was a complaint on complaint. With WEBCON, not anymore. Okay, the last one was the change request management. I talked about it, I mentioned it earlier. And this was really a nightmare because we have many requests for new developments. And we had a plain SharePoint list. Many departments opening items on it. The process was defined, but again, you can imagine what it looks like when you have a drop-down with status and just choose the correct one. If you're in this step, you are not allowed to choose the other ones, but people could still pick them. And not only that, we have a very bureaucratic way of dealing with requests for development. So we have to open it, analyze it, get it analyzed by developers, then we have to get the approval of the management, and so on and so on. So what the project office was doing was basically taking the email, sending it to the developers. When they got the answer, they took the email, they forwarded it to the management, asking for approval, and so they were just sending emails back and forth. And with WEBCON, we eliminated everything, every manual emails. We had a clear list of tasks, which one are opened, which one are being delivered, which one are being developed, and so on. And in this specific case, we didn't yet implement it, but we plan to set up the WEBCON app, web app, on the mobile phones, which would be, in my opinion, very useful to the management because they don't have to go to SharePoint to approve something. They can do it from their smartphones. Okay, I'll just skip this one. So our experience from the user perspective is users were wowed at first, their first approach to WEBCON. And that's why we had very fast user adoption. And because of that, a lot of processes were requested. So we had every few weeks, maybe a few days, a new request. Can you do that? Can you do that? And at the end, that resulted in having a better environment. The work was better organized. There was less human errors. And the processes were much quicker. And then on the other side, there was the admin perspective. So it was really easy and quick to implement new processes, new workflows, or to update existing ones. The transfer from development to production was really seamless. Everything worked like it worked in development, so we didn't have to retest every single functionality. Then, in my opinion, the forms consistency is very important because we didn't have to waste time deciding how to structure the forms, how to, where do we want to put those fields, how will they look like, and so on. The integration options were exactly what we needed. Here I can tell I'm no programmer. I again took some material WEBCON provided on their websites, on their blog, in the help section of the Designer Studio. And I was able to implement, or better, to call a web service that was available to me without any code. So that was, to me, quite fascinating. that I was able to retrieve some data and send some other data to one system that was kilometers away using the web service without writing any line of code. Next was connecting the workflows. So we didn't have, like mentioned before, we didn't have to develop the whole workflow from the start. We were able to do the most important part and then just add pieces to it in a later phase. And the last thing was custom reporting. We used the reporting services very much, and because of how the database is structured of WEBCON, it helped us a lot. It was very easy to create those reports with a bit of SQL knowledge. So that's it.